It's Jim Czek with KelownaNow, and I've got Iain Burns here, our managing editor for KelownaNow. And we're doing our segment on AI. We just held that AI summit. And Iain came up for the week, and he attended the AI summit, and we're going to do something a little bit every day on AI. Not with Iain, because he probably won't do it every day. But while he was here, we drove up to Greenwood, and actually Iain was driving my Tesla for the week. And he had some really cool thoughts on it. Go ahead, Iain. Tell us what you thought about driving a Tesla, your first time in a Tesla, I think.
Yeah, it was. I feel like we should probably say, first of all, that we don't work for Tesla. We don't, I don't have any shares or any sort of interest in Tesla, really. I'm not sort of involved. But just for the sake of kind of telling people what an experience it was, yeah, I feel like we probably should say something. And I thought it sort of blew my mind, actually, considering and I was surprised by that because I've heard so much about them. You obviously are a huge proponent of them. I believed what you said, but it's something very different to actually experience it yourself, I think. And, you say it yourself. I mean, it felt like the future. It felt like we were in the future and it's there, but you just have to kind of go out and try one, I suppose. And
Yeah, I
another
mean,
thing I would say, I don't know if this. I don't know if it's just Tesla. Maybe it's other electric cars too. I don't know. I know you have your opinions on that, but
yeah. So based on the AI summit, we were talking in automation, artificial intelligence, and all that. And basically, Tesla, as you experience the full self drive, it is basically a robot with wheels, right? So tell me what you thought of the first time you did full self drive. I mean, I think you were in the car with me, and I showed you how it worked, and you were kind of
yeah.
astonished.
Well, you just kind of you pulled down the thing, didn't you? And it was like, what the hell is happening here? It was a big surprise. I mean, obviously there's a bit of anxiety, a little bit of trepidation at first because you're in a car that's driving itself and the wheel turns by itself. That is weird, but it doesn't take long to get used to it, really, does it? And then every I think the first run you're scared a little bit because it's like, okay, how's it going to do this turn? Is it going to go right on a red? Is it going to avoid this person? And then once you see that it does every single one of those things again and again and again, I think you get a lot more at ease, don't you? And then like when we made that drive to Greenwood,
Which is about two
there was
hour
no
drive. Yeah.
yeah, there was no concern. Like at no point was I thinking I'm a little bit worried here, and I know you weren't, certainly
No,
not.
you're like, Jim, put your
But
hand on the wheel, but you weren't. You were just like, both of us were relaxed and we were actually having a good conversation without the stress of driving.
yeah, it's here. Like the technology is available right now.
Yeah.
I think that's probably most people who are a little bit curious maybe about EVs and EV technology, or like people who read the news. They probably know that this self-drive technology is there or thereabouts. And I suppose the shock for me is to discover that it's there. It is absolutely done. It's ready. It's ready to use right now. And that was the surprise for me, I think.
Yeah, I get accused of being a fanboy. A lot of people say, "Oh, you're just a fanboy for Tesla," but that like I don't think like what you said. A lot of people really understand the scope of it, though. They don't really understand that it actually literally drives me back and forth to work. And you were driving back and forth to work on your own. You were using the car for the week. And the first time you were by yourself, maybe just talk us through that first time that you kind of did it by yourself.
Well, first time I did it by myself, it was five a.m. or just after five, and actually it was about 5:30, I think, wasn't it, in Kelowna, so it was dark, and I was in a more sort of a more rural part of Kelowna, let's say, and I was a little bit unfamiliar with it, and yeah, I mean, it's remarkable. It's kind of like if you use Siri or if you use the Amazon Echo Dot and you ask it to play Spotify or something like that. That's what it was like. It was like I asked for a song to be played on Spotify basically, and the car then drove me to work, and I didn't really have to. Well, obviously you look around still, and it does watch your eyes. The camera watches your eyes to make sure that you're not being negligent, but I didn't really have to do anything else, and it relaxes your foot, it relaxes your arm, your body, because you can kind of sit differently. I was
Yeah, because
astonished by it. Yeah,
typically you're driving with your hands out, stressed in a stressed position, right? Like, and you're holding the wheel, right? Because you can
yeah,
feel it in your shoulders. But if you get to put your shoulders back, because at work you're doing that too, right? All day long you're on the keyboard and you're kind of typing. But
yeah,
now all of a sudden you can sit back and kind of relax, and you're more observant, and it's a safer drive. Not a lot of people don't say that, but Tony Seba has said that if everybody drove a Tesla, it would save 900,000 lives globally a year, because most accidents are caused by human. Um, what you would call inattention when they're driving, right? So like texting is actually the traffic accidents were on downslide until texting showed up, and then now they're on an uptrend as well because of a lot of the attention being diverted towards a phone, right?
yeah. But I mean, in terms of safety, yeah, it spots everything. I mean, the funniest thing about the self drive is when you look at the big monitor, which is like based on all the cameras, and it can see a person or something or a dog or whatever it is, and you see its little silhouette come
Yeah.
up before you even see the person
Yeah,
yourself,
it
because like maybe
3D
they're
maps
sort of
everything, right? Like as you see
yeah,
at an intersection, you see all the cars around you, you see everything, and all the lights, and it shows all the lights and everything, and it's pretty impressive actually, right? So, um,
yeah,
and it's recent, right? Because this has really only been rolled out like full self-drive in Canada. Um, I think it's only a couple months old, and I've been using it every day, and it's like the from when I started with version 11 to version 12 now. It's like leaps and bounds, and you were at the AI summit. You got to come to the AI summit, and you got to interview some of the speakers as well. What
yeah.
are some of the big takeaways from that? Like as far as like where you think AI is taking us?
Well, I think I mean Peter Diamandis was the keynote, and he was the keynote for for a reason. I think because he was, not to slight the other guests, but he's like a visionary. It seems he's reminds me a lot of Ray Kurzweil, who he mentioned actually, didn't he, in his
Yeah,
address. But I think he gave the best insight, and the best way to look at it is what I've been saying to people in my like, I think when you've been in a Tesla, I think you naturally, or many people, become like a convert, and they start to proselytize and try and tell everybody about it. And when I've been telling people about the Tesla, I've been saying it's kind of like it's like if your iPhone was a car, that's kind of what it's like, basically. In the simplest terms, that's how I can kind of describe it to people. And I feel like what Diamandis was saying was that principle and that kind of schema can be applied to cleaning toilets, chopping potatoes, whatever it is. Like basically any task can can be dealt with in a similar way. So you can have almost like the iPhone equivalent or the Tesla equivalent for, you know, a barbecue or something, or that's what I saw. And
yeah. Well, we did get that Chris Payne there from Forage was there, and they were doing their robotics, and it's based on the same principles because theirs is vision-based software that's picking mushrooms, right? And Tesla is a vision-based software that's driving a car, right? So it's a similar principle, right? And it's self-learning, which is the same as the Forage and the same as the Tesla. They're self-learning models, right? So, and the Forage guys, their software is writing its own code now, right? Like it's learning and then writing its own code and getting better and iterating itself, right? No different than Tesla's, right? So,
yeah,
well, when I first talked to you when you got back to Ottawa, there, it was kind of interesting that you took your wife Tal right away to a Tesla dealership to kind of just show her, because I found that interesting. Maybe share that with the audience.
yeah. Well, I mean, I've got two kids, and it's not very easy to look after them by yourself. But I volunteered to do that for my for my wife. Such is my newfound faith in Tesla. It's just she's very interested in technology, I think, and I knew that she didn't realize where it was. I've already told my dad as well. I've said like you've got to go to a dealership and have a look. But yeah, she looked at the Model Y,
Well,
which
that
is
makes
more
sense for
sort of
family for sure, especially two kids, right?
yeah, more suited to families. And she also sat in a Model 3 and was immediately astonished. I think it was the new 3, not
Yeah,
your
yeah, it
one,
would
but
be
the
the new
next one.
version. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, which doesn't even have like stalks. So she was
yeah,
saying that she went into drive on the screen. So
yeah.
she like turned it on, and then drive.
You just have to slide up, right? You just like slide
Yeah.
your finger up.
Yeah. And she was just astonished by it. I mean, as anybody probably would be. I just think even like the thing is, I'm quite ignorant of cars. Like, I don't really know much about cars, but even just things like how you kind of log into your profile, and then like the mirror comes down, the sort of wing mirrors, everything, the seat. It's designed for like no hassle, isn't it? Like you don't have to look around and try and find like a knob or something to try and like
Well, there's no
change the
knobs
air
to find.
conditioning. Yeah, exactly. It's just a big screen. It's kind of like, yeah. And also another thing about the Y that I was quite interested in is that they're going to put screens in the back
For the
so
kids,
that you
yeah.
can appease your
Yeah, and it
children.
streams YouTube and Disney and Netflix, all those things like stream in the car, right? So it's pretty
Yeah.
impressive, right? So
No, I was really impressed, and obviously we're talking here about the most valuable car company in the world, aren't we? And there's a reason for that, I think. And
yeah,
finally now I see, because I didn't really know much about them.
yeah. I
And
don't.
that,
Yeah, I don't think it's fair to call them a car company either, comparing to other cars, because they're much more than a car company. They're an energy company. They're an AI company. There's a whole bunch of things, right?
yeah,
And
batteries.
batteries, everything, and they're kind of like now. And they kind of intermingle because we can talk about this in future shows because we're going to do a lot of AI stuff as we move forward. Starlink has gotten a lot of like publicity in the last few days because of what happened in North Carolina, and that where Starlink, the internet, all the transmission lines are down, but Elon was called upon to provide Starlink services to a bunch, and I think they're dropping them off today, and they're getting communication back to people in those areas. Starlink has global communication, and then SpaceX, which is part of Starlink, and then like all those companies that kind of work together, and XAI is kind of like the AI company, and like I think they move engineers around from the different companies, kind of help problem solve, and I think they get so much broader scope like that. I think that's like one of their biggest benefits, right?
Yeah. I mean, you would know much better than me, but I don't know. Is there a rival for? There isn't really a rival for Starlink, is there? And I don't even think, is there a rival for self-drive for Tesla?
I think everybody's trying to work on it. I think that the Chinese auto companies are probably the closest to doing some stuff. But I think one of the things from Elon is that he says all the time is he's willing to license that technology to anybody. Like he's not trying to dominate the world. Like, the supercharger network is the largest EV charging network in the world. And, they tried to build out a different one that didn't really work out that well. And then he just let everybody else use it. So, I mean, they ought to pay to use it. But, Ford was the first one, GM, and I think almost all of them, including Rivian, just came out and said, like it's like clearly the best supercharger network in the world, and glad to partner with Tesla on it. And, they're kind of saying, they're hinting at like maybe Rivian's going to put their software inside a Rivian. Rivian's also a very popular vehicle too, right? It isn't close to where Tesla is in the software game, but I mean, they have a very unique looking lifestyle vehicle. I think people really like them. So, yeah.
But I guess if we look back to 2007 or whenever it was, maybe it was earlier when the iPhone came out, that kind of blew away its competition, didn't it?
Yeah, like nobody,
in
and it's still
retrospect,
to
we'd
this
certainly
day,
say
it's
that.
it's tough to compete with the iPhone, like anything, just in brand, right? Like just in brand, I think there's some probably decent product out there that wins in a bunch of different things, but like as far as the iPhone brand, it's pretty strong, right? So
Yeah, but it's positive at least to be able to look back and say it was so far ahead, but now Samsung and some others, that they have the same capability at least, if not the
yeah,
same style. So presumably then Ford and the rest of them will imitate Tesla, and they will
I think
all have these cars.
what Elon has said is that his goal is to get everybody into an electric vehicle for a cleaner, brighter future for everybody, and that doesn't mean just Teslas, right? Like he's definitely. I mean, I think him and Jim Farley from Ford have a good relationship, and I wouldn't be surprised to see some Tesla technology and Ford's coming up too, right? Because a lot of people love the brand, right? The brand Ford Broncos and stuff like that. But just think if you put that different look, one of the detractors for Tesla would be they're pretty vanilla. Like they all look the same too, right? Whether it's a Y or a 3, they're a little bit different in shape. But that's one of their strengths too, because I think 60% of the parts go across all the model lines, right? So they don't build a lot of parts, and inside a Tesla, it's fairly minimalist, right? There's not a lot of stuff to see, not a lot of buttons and doodads and whoodads, right? But everything's there that you could want. It just happens to be all in one screen, right?
Yeah. I mean, the other thing, since we're talking about, we're singing the praises of EVs, we should probably say that when we were down there in Greenwood, there was a charger there, wasn't there? There's also one in Midway, I think it
Yeah.
was, or near
Yeah,
Midway.
they
I
were
mean, they are everywhere,
level
aren't
two
they? The
chargers in
chargers.
that too. Yeah, so like there wasn't a supercharger down there, but there was level 2 chargers in each of those little towns. Yeah.
Yeah, because I just think people maybe are a bit afraid that they're going to be stranded or something like that, and they're not going to be able to refill.
Yeah. So I think level 2 chargers, you can put one in your home, and I think the home you just bought came with a level 2 charger, right? So now all you need
Yeah.
is the car to go with it. Yeah. So again, that's great. We'll talk more about the AI summit too that you got to attend to, because you interviewed a few people. Maybe we'll talk about that in the next day or two on some of your
Yeah.
interviews. You interviewed Jeff Booth and a couple of the other people there too as well. So we'll cut this
Definitely.
short today though. So there's Iain's first drive and full self drive, and then Josh rented one for his wedding too, and then he actually rented one and drove on his honeymoon, but he didn't use full self drive, so he's got another step to go there. So anyway, thank you, Iain, and thank you for watching Kelowna Now.